Why weren't you at elf practice?
So Frieren is the new anime that everyone is gooning over, although just like every other popular anime, it'll be forgotten about once it's done. Oh, hold up. So originally I wasn't planning on reviewing Frieren since I thought it'd just be good and not have too much to say about it. However, that's not what happened since I'm sorta mixed on the series. While I do overall enjoy it, there is one major flaw keeping me from saying that it's good or even pretty good, which is its first handful of episodes. Now, what exactly is wrong with them?
This is so boring.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the first 5 to 6 episodes are pretty boring and do a poor job at keeping me interested and invested. The series begins with Frieren and her team coming back from killing the Demon King, which... okay, this is different. Normally this is the end goal for a fantasy series, so it's unique to have a series start here. Everyone celebrates since the Demon King is... and then there's a 50-year time skip where one of the members called Himmel dies. Frieren realizes that she should have appreciated her time with him, gotten to know him, and...
Why are you crying?
However, after this, she leaves for another 20 years, which is pretty dumb. She just said she should appreciate her time with her friends, but then chooses to leave and be alone for 2 whole decades. It doesn't have to be for too long, but you really couldn't have stayed with one of the other 2 members that you were with for so many years. Anyway, after 2 decades, she comes back and sees the priest Hitler, who's going to die soon. She spends a good couple months with him, along with a girl named Fern. Eventually, she leaves with Fern, who becomes her apprentice, and then the series finally starts. Alright, let's start with the problems. First off are the deaths and how the emotional moments don't really work. Frieren has known Himmel and Hitler for many years, so it makes sense for her to feel sad and even cry like a bitch. However, as a viewer, this doesn't really work since we've barely seen either of them. I get that this is supposed to make us feel bad for Frieren and not the characters themselves, but still, I don't feel anything during these scenes. Frieren also hasn't done much during this time to make me care for her since she's just a kudere elf during these episodes, and that's it. Again, this is a different way to start off the series, and I appreciate the author doing something new, but I don't think it works out too well. Also, I wouldn't be complaining about this too much, but apparently Himmel and Hitler's death made people cry.
You serious?
After watching the first few episodes, I wasn't impressed and decided to check out some of the comments on MyAnimeList. People were saying how amazing and emotional these scenes were, and that they cried despite barely knowing the characters. Now, I've seen over 1,000 anime, and you want to know how many have made me cry from sadness? 4. That's right. Only 4. Making me cry is extremely hard to do, but even so, I fail to understand how these episodes made people goon tears from their eye sockets. If making people cry is that easy, I bet I could do it easily. You know what? Fuck it. I'm putting this review on hold. Here's a short film I made to prove my point. I hope this makes every single one of you cry yourselves to sleep. So once upon a time, there's this kid walking down the street. He's all of a sudden a fucking car comes, and he runs him over. The kid's on the ground. He's almost dead. He gets back up. He's walking around again, and these 3 guys come, and they beat the fucking shit out of him like this. He jumps up, and the guys are gone. They're gone. And all of a sudden, there's another guy coming up. He kicks him in the balls, and he's lying there on the ground. Then, just when you think everything's fucking gone to shit, a bear comes, and he eats him. And this other bear comes and eats him too. Now the kid's almost dead. He has no money. He got run over, and these 2 big-ass bears almost killed him. Then out of nowhere, a big fat-ass woman comes and sits on him, and that's what kills him. That's the end of the story. Fuck you. Anyway, once the story actually starts, it mainly focuses on Frieren and Fern. This is a problem because both of them are planks of wood that rarely show emotion. They aren't emotionless, obviously. They do get to act like actual characters at times, but these scenes are few and far between. So because of this, most of their scenes consist of them talking in a monotone voice, which gets really boring and tiring. They both feel way too similar despite them having the potential to be very distinct characters. Frieren is an elf that has lived for over 1,000 years, is very experienced at magic and also helped kill the Demon King. However, since she's lived for so long, she's seen so many people die, which caused her to stop feeling attached to people. Fern is an orphan whose parents died in Vietnam, so that drama caused her to grow up and become very serious and mature. Both of these characters have a reason for acting the way that they do, however they don't work together. Again, many of their scenes are so boring since they constantly talk in a monotone way. I mean really, who in their right mind would watch someone talk like this for 20 minutes straight? Oh wait. Now, kuderis can and have worked in plenty of other shows. There's Yuki Nagato from Haruhi, as well as Shina from Pet Girl of Sakura-so, who's also the main character. The main reason they both work there is because there's other characters that are more energetic and normal who contrast as well as complement them. Although I love Shina, she wouldn't be in my top 10 waifus if everyone else in the show acted the way she did. She's distinct because she's a kudere, as well as just being a very fun and memorable character. Anyway, just because the dynamic between the two main characters doesn't work doesn't mean the rest of the show isn't bad, right? Unfortunately, no, because its story is just as uninteresting as its characters. Barely anything happens during the first 5 episodes since Frieren and Fern go around doing the most basic things. The second half of episode 2 has them go around looking for flowers, and it sucks. This is even more bizarre considering the first half of the episode wasn't that bad either. Hitler's death, while not great, is at least notably stronger than Himmel's since we at least get some time to know him. It also helps that he's one of the better characters in the show too. So to go from that to looking for fucking flowers for 15 minutes is just confusing. Also, before you start typing your essays in the comments, yes, I get the significance of this. This is to show that Frieren cares for her friends, especially Himmel, which is why she spends so much time doing this. But still, this is so boring and slow when the next couple episodes are the same too. Nothing happens in episode 3 until the end where Frieren fights a demon, which while cool is also very short. This fight also shows off the world's magic, which is yet another problem. The magic is very generic and bland for the first 7 episodes. Frieren uses a spell that makes flowers, she and Fern can levitate things, they can shoot out magical attacks, and that's pretty much it. During this fight, however, they do take some time to try and develop how the magic works. So this demon has a super powerful spell which has killed many people, however over time it's become very average since defensive magic can now defend it. However, it's still a powerful spell since defensive magic drains a lot of the user's mana. That is interesting, and the fight itself is fun, although it's heavily carried by the animation, plus it's still super short too. Episode 4 also sucks. Half of it is spent with Frieren and Fern cleaning up a beach. Towards the end of episode 5, a new character gets introduced who's called Mr. Stark.
I don't feel so good.
He's the best character, but that's mainly because he's the only one that seems to show any emotion. And even then, at least half the time, he still talks in a monotone way like everyone else. Stark does fight against a dragon, which actually isn't half bad. This whole time, he thinks he's really weak, but in reality, he's super duper pooper strong. That was a surprise, but still, this fight is mainly carried by its amazing animation. So yes, the first 6 episodes suck. There are some good ideas and even some decent moments, but overall they were a chore to sit through. Frieren and Fern don't work well together, all the characters talk in a monotone way, the pacing is way too slow, the magic as well as its world isn't interesting, hell, even the end goal sucks too. Frieren wants to go to the Demon King's castle so she can talk to Himmel's ghost, which I don't really care for. There's literally no threat in these episodes and the only antagonist dies in a short battle. There's no tension, no stakes, and pretty much no exciting goal either. So the series just comes down to a group of emotionless characters walking around doing nothing. At this point, I was set on dropping the series since I didn't like it and failed to understand why so many people love it. But I decided to continue watching it since I really don't like reviewing only a portion of a series.
Drop the drum!
And so I watched episode 7, and it's by far the best episode up until this point. Everyone goes into a town and Frieren sees a demon who's trying to make peace with the town's king. She tries to kill him but gets arrested instead. We then get a flashback of when Frieren was forced to spear a demon even though it already killed a human. The town's chief took her in, but then a few years later it ended up killing him, so Frieren kills her and believes that all demons are evil.
I don't feel so good.
It's a genuinely good flashback and one that I actually cared for. There were many flashbacks during the first few episodes, but none of them seemed important besides just is showing why Frieren cares for her friends. This one is important though, since it shows why Frieren hates demons who all seem to be the show's villains. It's also hard to tell what direction the show is going to take here. Frieren could be right and the demons could be evil, or they could be some of the few demons that aren't giant pieces of shiitake mushrooms after all. The reason this works is because we've only seen one other demon before this, so we have no idea if Frieren is going to be right or wrong. By the end, it's shown that the demons are evil, which I'm perfectly fine with. Yes, the demons are pretty one-note and evil just for being evil. However, I'm fine with this, since having antagonists as well as stakes are some of the things the show desperately needs. It would be nice if some of the demons were more complex and deep, but at the same time, I'm perfectly fine with this, since they are the series' first major villains. So yes, episode 7 is where the series picks up, although it's not great or anything. The first third of the episode is still pretty slow, and it's difficult to try and suddenly care for a series which left a really bad first impression. That being said, after this, it feels like I'm watching a completely different show, and in a good way. There's this one demon who has thread magic which allows him to cut people's heads off. He thinks he can kill Frieren, but then she easily kills him, which is pretty funny. There's this other demon called Joe who is able to move and harden his blood like a sword, which is also pretty cool. There's a handful of fights here and all of them are solid. Fern fights Joe, Stark fights Pinkie Pie, and Frieren fights Hillary Clinton. These fights mainly come down to the demons underestimating everyone and losing, which is satisfying to watch. They also show off more of the character skills, which is something we've still barely seen up to this point. This is best shown in Frieren's fight, which reveals something that's a huge part of the show. This entire time, Frieren has been hiding her true mana level, which barely anyone does since it takes forever to master. Also, demons can do this, but they choose not to since they think it's something only pussies do. This ability is really cool and is why Frieren has been able to defeat so many of her enemies, including Hillary. Her magic puts both her and her opponent's mana on a scale, and whoever is stronger is able to control the one who has the weaker mana. So for many decades, Hillary has taken the souls of many people and controlled them. However, since Frieren can hide her mana level, she's able to trick Hillary into putting her mana on the scale. Then once this happens, she reveals her true power and overpowers Hillary. Frieren then tells her to do the funny.
Kill yourself.
Once the fights are done, Frieren reveals that despite being 1,000 years old, she's still an unlicensed mage. So now the three of them head off to another town, so she, as well as Fern, can take a mage exam in order to become first-class mages. And with that, the first major arc of the series is done. And wow, that was a nice surprise. This arc addressed and fixed many of my issues with the first 6 episodes. It's well paced, the magic and spells are interesting, the fights are good, there's an actual threat as well as stakes, and even a new goal too. The only problem would be its characters, since many of them still talk in a monotone way. That being said, there are many more characters, and again, literally everything else is fixed, so I'm able to forgive this since it's not a big problem anymore. Once this arc is done, the next 6 episodes are spent on everyone traveling around and not doing much. These episodes can range from good to just alright. They clearly aren't as good as the last few episodes, but still, they aren't a chore to sit through like the first 5 or 6 were. These are much slower and slice of life ones and focus more on the characters themselves. Some of these moments are pretty good, such as when we see Stark's past and find out that his life fucking sucked. We also get introduced to a new character called Sin, who's a priest and joins Frieren's party. He's a good addition to the cast, however, surprisingly, he leaves only a few episodes later. It makes sense for him to leave, although it seems like a waste since, again, he is one of the better characters. And if he wasn't here, I would probably be more negative towards these episodes. Speaking of negative, while none of these episodes are bad, there's definitely stuff to complain about. While it's not a chore to watch, the slow pacing is still a problem. Also, some of the scenes just aren't that interesting in general. The first half of episode 16 is probably the worst, since it mainly focuses on Frieren and this old man, which I didn't care for. Thankfully, the second half is pretty solid, which centers around Sin, but still, the first half unfortunately reminds me of the earlier episodes. Anyway, episode 18 is when the next big arc starts, which has Frieren and Fern take the mage exam. It's another good arc, mainly for the same reasons as the last arc. It's much more shonen-like, the fights are solid, there's some fun new characters, and some of the new magic is really cool. There's this guy who can clone himself and when at the end it's revealed that he never even left his house to begin with. This entire time, he's just had multiple clones take the exam, even though he's miles and miles away, which was pretty shocking. There's also this one girl who can cut through anything as long as she can imagine doing it. While it's obvious that Frieren and Fern are going to make it to the final part of the test, it's still exciting and fun to see how exactly they get there. Also, I like how underwhelming the final part of the test is. Everyone walks in and one of the great elf mages tells them if they pass or fail.
You fail, you fail, you fail, you fail.
I'll fail, it's such a funny word.
I thought for sure the last test would have everyone fight against each other in a tournament or something and that the season would end on a cliffhanger. But no, they didn't, and because of that, the season doesn't end unresolved. Yes, the series is still ongoing, but I don't feel like I'm receiving a giant middle finger telling me to go read the manga now.
Think of it this way. The smartest among us.
If there's one thing everyone can agree upon, it's that Frieren looks fucking fantastic. Its backgrounds are great, characters are always on model, and its animation is insane. Studio Madhouse is finally back, and this is one of their absolute best looking shows. All the fights are extremely well animated and directed, and even during the slice of life scenes, the show still looks great. That being said, there is one minor complaint I have with the art, which is that it doesn't look distinct. It still looks like your average fantasy anime, and its character designs, while not bad at all, aren't very unique. There's nothing wrong with them, and they're always well drawn, but it's hard to separate this from other fantasy anime. Again, this is just a nitpick since everything else about its art is amazing, so I can't complain too much.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
As for its soundtrack, it's pretty good. I can't complain about much here either. This isn't something I'd listen to in my spare time, but all the tracks are solid and they fit the tone the series was going for. And as for its English dub, holy shit. It's pretty much perfect. Yes, the characters do talk in a monotone way, but the acting and deliveries of these lines are all great. All the actors do an amazing job, every voice fits every character, it's genuinely fantastic and one of the best dubs, period. It doesn't matter if you despise dubs, I guarantee that you will enjoy the dub, and if you somehow don't, then I will find you, rip your ears off, and... But yeah, Frieren is sort of a mixed bag, having a shitty and sluggish start, good first arc, decent middle, but thankfully solid final arc. Although many of my complaints with the first batch of episodes were fixed, some of them are still an issue throughout the series. While I do enjoy some of the characters, it's still bizarre that literally everyone talks in this monotone and emotionless way. While the pacing does improve, it still feels slow in some areas and even episodes, but again, nothing too bad. Again, if the first few episodes didn't suck, then I'd have no problem saying that this is a good anime. However, due to this one major flaw, as well as other minor issues, the series is unfortunately just
Okay.
Maybe on a rewatch I'll enjoy the series more, but as for now, I'm giving Frieren's Home for Constipated Friends a 6.87 out of 10. Despite what people say, Frieren isn't the best anime of all time, since that title belongs to the one and only Heaven's Lost Property. If you want to hear me talk about why that is, then you can subscribe, since I'll be making a 7-hour review of it, which will be out eventually.
Kill yourself.